A friend of mine recently experienced what felt like the beginning of a real connection. A woman that he was seemed to be connecting with was sending him flurries of text messages, and they were beginning to spend quality time together. And there was a real sense of closeness in those moments, a feeling that something meaningful was developing. And then out of nowhere, he gets this text message from her, and it says, I have to find myself by being alone. So, in today's video, we're going to be talking about finding closure, healing the heart after ghosting, flaking, and other crazy making relational drama. I'm Ben Ufana. So, I'm completing this article. I've had a very limited amount of time to put this together, and yet I think it's sounding good. Anyway, let's dive into it. Oh, and be sure to look below and click like and subscribe. I too, as most of us have at some point, been on the receiving end of this kind of flakiness. I'd meet someone, be spending time with her, and feeling like there is a genuine connection. And then suddenly she stops responding to my messages. Maybe weeks later, I get some kind of excusey text or email or something, only to have her disappear again without a word. And to be fair, men are just as guilty of this kind of flaky ass behavior. Many of the women I've known over the years, either as friends or that I've worked with, have shared with me their own accounts of men who have flaked on or ghosted them. Also, want to mention, since there's so much detail in these articles I'm writing, I will be referring back to my article, glancing at it, possibly reading some sections. And I would actually encourage you to, if you're seeing this video on YouTube, look below and click on the link and read the more detailed article for anything I may have left out. So these relationships, although often brief, can be especially intense. They can have an enormous impact on us, and they leave us feeling sometimes as though we have found the love of our life, possibly our soulmate, if there really is such a thing. And you start imagining a future together, maybe even getting married. At first, the connection feels so deep, but then things get weird. And as I said before, they take forever to respond to text or calls, or they stop responding altogether. And their ambiguity can be incredibly maddening. Their sudden withdrawal leaves you feeling hurt and angry and confused and emotionally drained. You're thinking obsessively, trying to make sense of it all. Now, when we first get together, it often feels as though we have this amazing connection. They seem to be so fully present with us, but they can't sustain it. And many people carry these profoundly deep emotional wounds that limit their capacity to love and to be loved. And it's important for us to understand that the deeper the trauma or emotional wounding on the part of these individuals that we form an attachment to, the more likely they are to be ambiguous, inconsistent, and incongruent in their words, actions, and behaviors. Now, sometimes there's just a lack of resonance. Maybe this person likes us, maybe they get caught up in their feelings of wanting to be physically intimate. But that doesn't mean that they have any need or desire for a deeper or more lasting connection. Sometimes there are instances where a person withdraws only to resurface at some point down the road. I do know of a number of instances where it happened and the two people ended up together in a long-term relationship, but I would say don't count on it. I feel the best thing to do in these instances is step back and do what it takes to facilitate your own healing, take care of your own well being. And if that person happens to resurface down the road, then you can reassess at that point. Now, when someone drops out of your life, suddenly it leaves you hanging, and it can trigger all these obsessive thoughts and confusion, sense of unfinished business, feelings of loss and regret. And you might find yourself feeling at fault as if you said or did something wrong or wondering what you should or shouldn't have said, all because the relationship didn't work out. And we end up comparing ourselves and our love life or lack thereof to those who are happily partnered. And it leaves us feeling bad about ourselves because we're not. And this kind of relational dynamic, it often involves an individual who is emotionally conflicted. And while not everyone who behaves this way is operating with an avoidant attachment style, they may still exhibit avoidant tendencies. And it can be especially frustrating and confusing when it seems like we're connecting deeply with someone only for that person to suddenly distance themselves or completely vanish without any explanation. So let's explore why this happens. Some people long for connection but struggle when relationships become more emotionally intimate than they can comfortably handle. At first, they may seem open and engaged, but as the intimacy deepens, they begin to feel overwhelmed and they pull back. They withdraw to regain a sense of emotional control. And statements like, I need to find myself by being alone, often reflect their emotional vulnerability or all the crazy emotions running around on the inside of them that they are not capable of processing. Again, the flakiness that I described at the beginning of this video often stems from being emotionally conflicted. And at first, the person may genuinely feel excitement and interest, but as the deeper emotions surface, fear and confusion and uncertainty about what they wanted might take over. And this push pull dynamic is common among those carrying all this unresolved emotional baggage, and even more so, those who are afraid of being hurt again. A lot of times, you have all these emotions operating within the subconscious, and people don't even know what's driving them because they're so disconnected from those deeper emotional currents that are operating from within. Sometimes personal challenges such as unresolved traumas or depression or previous toxic relationships, other drama playing out in their lives can make people behave inconsistently. Or they may feel drawn to connect with us, but suddenly hit a mental or emotional roadblock that makes them pull away. Again, it's all this trauma and other emotional wounding or the backlog of conflicted emotions that as they start to get close, it triggers all that tangled mass of highly charged emotion that's held on the inside of them. And ghosting then becomes a way for them to avoid emotional discomfort or confrontation. Some individuals pursue emotional connections quickly and later become squeamish about the direction the relationship is heading. They might enjoy the initial excitement of connecting with us, but when things start to feel serious, they realize they aren't ready or they don't see the relationship as lasting. In a world dominated by Tinder, Hinge, and all these other matchmaking apps, and social media, flakiness has become the standard operating procedure for so many. The fear of missing out on other potential partners only adds to it. Maybe they see someone they think is cuter or more handsome. They may connect with us briefly only to lose interest when that other option presents itself, reflecting the superficiality of dating in the age of digital media attention deficit and dating apps. So, how do we approach situations like this? It can be a devastating blow to our self esteem, reinforcing our sense of being unlovable or even defective when the person we thought we had a connection with distances themselves or disappears, especially when this seems to keep happening. And it's important for us to not take it personally. The mixed messages, the ambiguity, and flakiness are often reflections of the other person's internal conflicts rather than judgments on us. When someone is distancing, disappearing, or just being flaky, it can be helpful if or when the opportunity presents itself to communicate honestly and openly, expressing our feelings and asking for clarity. While this might not change the outcome, it can provide some sense of closure. I've often asked myself when I've encountered whatever flaky or ambiguous behaviors, what is it that I need to say to this person? And once I know I've said what truly needs to be said, I find it easier to let go. If we keep encountering romantic interest in other people who are displaying the same kinds of behaviors, it's important for us to evaluate the types of individuals and connections we're drawn to and how it aligns with our needs for emotional intimacy. Also, consider that flakiness has, in many ways, become part of our modern day culture, making it something that we're bound to encounter. And yet, again, these patterns also, as I said, reflect the deep emotional wounding that many of us have yet to heal. And dealing with these dynamics in our search for love can be incredibly frustrating. But recognizing them as a reflection of our emotional wounding and taking the necessary steps to facilitate our healing allows us to navigate relationships with greater clarity and emotional balance. For those of us who struggle with an insecure attachment style and who have suffered repeated experiences of abandonment, the pain can be extraordinarily intense, ripping open our deepest emotional wounds. And we find ourselves consumed with overwhelming feelings of anxiety, the constant fear of loss, and the obsessive thinking takes over. And the pain we experience in these moments can be excruciating. It's the emotional equivalent of being tortured. And for some of us, this pattern of meeting someone and getting to know them, getting close only for the other person to suddenly pull away without explanation, it keeps repeating itself, and often with devastating consequences. Those of us who truly want connection are operating from one of our most basic needs, which is that of to love and to be loved. And we're seeking consistency. Fearing loss, we reach out in an attempt to hold on, trying to stabilize the connection. And yet, our fears and insecurities invariably push this other person that we want to hold on to even further away. Many of us, in our attempt to make sense of the chaos, retreat into our heads as if thinking it through could somehow give us control over the other person we've grown attached to and the situation itself. But our obsessive thoughts only amplify our anxiety and intensify our need for the other person. In these moments, it is so critically important for us to be able to step back and ask ourselves, what are the deepest feelings behind all this relational drama? We need to fully open ourselves and immerse our awareness in the depths of all the pain and fear and anxiety, the confusion, or whatever other emotions are surfacing. It's essential for us to go where these feelings are located within our bodies, breathing softly and deeply. It means breathing all the way down to our abdomen. Make sure you're also expanding your rib cage, breathing very slowly, inhaling fully, exhaling again, fully and deeply. Because as you do so, it engages this deeper, innate healing intelligence residing within your body and mind that helps you to digest both your lived experiences and all those distressing emotions. The loss of a love, whether through breakup or divorce or being left by someone or being ghosted, can stay with us indefinitely. In the early stages, we feel the acute pain of the loss. Long afterward, there may still be this lingering sadness or longing, a sense of emptiness. Again, we need to go where these feelings are situated within our body. Fully immerse yourself in the depths of any feelings or sensations, being patient, giving it the time it needs, breathing, as I said, softly, deeply, following the feelings and sensations as they go through their progression. Sometimes this can take weeks, months. Just give it the time it needs. Again, it can be extraordinarily painful when you feel like you're finally connecting with someone. You're thinking to yourself, I finally found love, found this really special someone, only for that person to disappear, to weird out. And now you're back to zero. You're left with this horribly empty void and all these convoluted emotions. And yet, it's so important, despite the suffering that we're experiencing, for us to see this as an opportunity to heal and grow. So many of us are carrying these profoundly deep emotional wounds. And those individuals who show up in our lives only to disappear, they often bring us face to face with these wounds. And despite the suffering, as I said, these experiences are an opportunity to connect with the deeper pain that resides within us, to access these deeper layers of emotional wounding held within our bodies. As we learn to work effectively to digest our experiences of love and loss and the emotions that follow, these wounded parts of us begin to heal and evolve. As we heal, we become more secure in ourselves, connected to this deep, authentic core being that resides within, our source within. We become less needy, no longer dependent on another person for our emotional well being, our sense of worth. We stop personalizing their words and their actions, their lack of interest, or their failure to respond or reciprocate. As you progress on your healing journey, you'll develop a healthy sense of detachment. For instance, you may find someone attractive, yet you can also feel their emotional wounding. You can sense the lack of maturity. You recognize their limited capacity to sustain any kind of meaningful connection. And you can be friendly and open, maybe even build a friendship with that individual while still maintaining a healthy distance. Or you may choose to let it go and walk away. Talking with a friend or therapist can help us to make sense of what we've gone through and sort through our feelings. And psychotherapy, for many of us, is an important part of our healing journey. The challenge, however, is that while this process may provide an intellectual understanding, it's easy for us to get stuck in our heads, and the deep emotional wounding can remain unhealed. Getting deep tissue massage, and I encourage you to do multiple sessions, can help to bring the sadness and grief and other painful emotions to the surface. Once we begin to access these emotions, we can breathe into them. It helps us to digest them. And while these emotions can be quite uncomfortable, it's essential for us to be accessing these emotions, because you have to access the feelings so that you can process or digest them, so that you can heal and let go and move on. Having trained with a traditional Native American doctor or medicine man, my mentor, Horace Dolkai, is one of the last surviving traditional doctors among the Kiowa tribe. During my apprenticeship, he would transmit portions of his own healing gifts to me. In order to earn the right to work with these gifts of healing, he had me go through this process, the vision quest, that involves fasting alone in the mountains for 4 days and nights with no food and no water. I've gone many, many times over the years, and there have been instances while I've been on the mountain, if when I was dealing with this kind of issue, where I could feel this presence descending into my body. And it was this extraordinarily powerful presence was enabling me to digest my lived experiences, the relational drama of love and loss, and all the emotions attached to it. I'd come out the other side feeling stronger, lighter, and more resilient, more of a sense of freedom, so I could let go and move on. Simultaneously, I could also feel as this presence working within me was building this whole new foundation that was increasing my capacity to show up more fully present, to love and be loved. As this happened, I found myself attracting into my life companions with whom I could co create more meaningful and more deeply fulfilling relationships. Now, the vision quest is far too intense for most people. And yet, those who have the opportunity to work with me experience the same kinds of transformation within their own bodies and minds and within their love lives. They heal from the devastation of the breakup or divorce or being ghosted and other heartrending emotional drama. They're able to let go, to bounce back. They become far more resilient. And in many instances, they're able to attract into their life a truly amazing companion. I do offer sessions individually. I work in person. Also, I can work remotely over the phone. So when you're ready to take the next step in your healing journey, do reach out to me.